really, what is EAA? And the definitions around that. Why in the world would you want to do EAA? What equipment is needed to actually do this? What are some realistic expectations within EAA? I'll show you some of my examples, and if time permits, I don't know why I didn't update, but I might even do a quick demo of how you would actually use images to live stack through a tool that I use called SharpCap. We'll talk about that later. So really, kind of what is it? And that is a subject of evolving evolving in nature. But here's what I think it is. And I apologize. Long slideshow. Apologize. Correct one. Okay. Hopefully.
I can't hear you, Mike.
Can you guys hear me at all?
No.
Now we do.
Now we can.
Back in.
That's really weird. Okay, I don't know if I did something weird with the slideshow or not. So, apologize. Multiple PowerPoints. Okay. All right. I confirm you guys are able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, but now we're seeing you, not your presentation. Just so you know.
Oh, okay. Stop that. Okay. Okay. How about now? You should see my presentation.
Looks like it, yeah.
Okay, very good. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is something that EAA developed out of video astronomy. And it's more of an evolution of that, really from a technological standpoint. It is about observing an object as close to as possible in real time, and not necessarily about collecting the data for later use. So instead of using the eyepiece, we're using the sensitivity of a camera or some other device to enhance your view now, and not necessarily for later. And it's really about exploiting technology, and that could be either in a camera, and we call that integration. So I've kind of highlighted that. Keep that in the back of your minds. A night vision device, or using technology of a computer. And again, another item to remember called live stacking, all in the with the goal of enhancing your view of that object. I think most purists will agree that if you're processing the image, or at least post-processing the image, it's not EAA. It's more akin to astrophotography or imaging. And on cloudy nights, it is definitely an evolving subject. So is it astrophotography or is it observing? And that's where, again, there are many similarities between both. I would say it's neither, and it is both all at the same time. There are very many similarities, and I think in a lot of cases you can almost look at it as a kind of progression along a paradigm, not a paradigm, kind of basically progression towards astrophotography from uh, the visual observing. Um, just a brief history of it. And this, I think, was one of the coolest little articles I've ever read. So this came out in 1928 from the Lick Observatory, and it is, in essence, talking about the emerging technology of television and the ability to leverage television to broadcast views across the world from any telescope. So they've just got this little picture of an observatory telescope pointed at Mars, um, the signal coming back, and then using television to send it into the homes of everyday citizens. Um, so that was really, really neat. Then the next thing I could find as far as just the history of that wasn't until 1962. I love this particular photograph of this gentleman in Australia, and he's got a really, really, good-sized camera set up here in his pointing at his telescope. He's got what I can only describe as a very sleek monitor, and he looks very comfortable in his suit. Um, I kind of chuckle thinking, I can't imagine anyone showing up in Big Woods dressed like this. So, um, but I think it is really neat as far as the history is concerned. But then we get into more modern times, and where this really started to evolve was in the 1990s. We had some amateurs really starting to experiment with webcams back then. So if anyone can remember things like the Quick Cam or Philips 2Cam, as well as some very inexpensive CCD TV security surveillance cameras. The popular ones were called the super circuits. And these at the time were really only good for bright objects, bright solar system objects. You couldn't do deep sky with any of them. Then much later in the 1990s, companies like Stellacam, Malincam, and others emerged, coming out with these highly sensitive but really small chips. Then, as we continued into the 2000s, innovations kept coming. They started adding color, additional enhancements within the cameras, as well as some cooling. And then, even in the late 2000s, again, we had users starting to experiment with really good cameras, such as the LN300 and various Samsung models. In fact, my first camera is almost a knockoff clone of a LN300. And now we're at a stage where we're getting much larger chips, much lower read noise. And instead of lots of different cables coming out of the cameras, we're now able to control cameras with a single USB cable. And the software, and this is where I think it huge difference. The software is now allowing to take really unlimited exposures, really provide clean views, and able to do real-time enhancements. So the software is just amazing. I apologize. I see a note. Are we seeing the presentation in the screen or
Mike, we see your notes. We see the presenter view.
Sorry, I apologize.
So we had little spoiler alerts right on the right side of the screen is what they're saying.
Yeah, okay. Apologies. Okay.
That looks right.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so what does a setup for EAA look like? And when you just have pretty much a standard analog camera. You have your scope, then that. So when you have your standard analog setup, you've got your scope, and then you've got your camera. You definitely have to power your camera some way, as well as get the feed to some sort of monitor. So this is a scenario where you're not using it to actually capture anything. It's just camera to a monitor. Then you start to use a computer. And in these scenarios, it gets a little more advanced, starting to leverage the power of the computer. You add in a video grabber of some sort that takes that signal coming from the camera and converts it into a digital format that you can load right in the computer. And oftentimes, either what's not included here is a third cable that would necessarily control the camera settings, or you'd have to be punching the little buttons on the back of the camera. And in a few cases, you could maybe get some sort of computer control. But again, lots of different wires, and gets a little more complicated setup. And then lastly, now with some of the more advanced cameras and more modern cameras, it's becoming a little bit easier. Pictured a ZWO camera here in the ZWO red, where it's just one single cable from the scope to the computer. But those are the very basic setups for EAA, or video astronomy. So, but why in the world would we want to do that? And I think, to me, the biggest rationale is really to increase what you're able to view with your existing telescope. So this is a sketch that I was able to find, taken from a very dark sky site up in West Virginia, obviously of the Ring Nebula. And this was sketched, so someone's visually doing this with a 14-inch SCT. Now, compared to that is my view from Jordan Lake, obviously not as dark as the orbital 3 skies of West Virginia. But when you compare the two views, and we look at the dimmest object you can find in both of those pieces. So I grabbed the dimmest star that this individual sketched versus what I can see of probably the dimmest object in my view. You're looking at a difference between 15.3 magnitude and 19.45. So that's almost 3 magnitudes difference in what you can see. Obviously, in EAA, you get a little color as well. So given the fact that you've got a bigger telescope, darker skies, yet you can see tremendously more using this view than what you can visually. So definitely a way to increase your light grasp. Another really convincing argument to do this is light pollution. So in this particular view, this was taken from basically zone 4. So this is still a very, very urban part of London. This would be similar or probably even worse than downtown Raleigh. And you can see that this is quite an amazing picture. And this is from a 12-inch SCT. And it's approximately less than 2 minutes of exposure on this area or this particular image. I think it also gives us a great opportunity for outreach. And I know I've actually done quite a bit of outreach with my camera setup. In fact, the right 2 panels of this mosaic were taken from I think it was October of 2019 when we did statewide star party, but after because of the in September because of some storms during the April statewide star party. But here's some other views. I love the idea of taking the view that you have and projecting it down onto the pavement. So we have two views of that. And then the bottom left-hand two images are actually of my very, very first time trying to do EAA. This is with Matt Lachansky's monitor or camera, a Steadicam, and that is, if anyone remembers Ian Hewitt, that is his 32-inch TV, and we're in front of the museum there in downtown Raleigh. So it does present an amazing opportunity for outreach and to share the views with people. The other piece here is that, at least from an outreach perspective, what I find is when when people come to an outreach event, and this is by no means a substitution for the view from eyepiece, but what this really helps is you can actually talk to an object and you can spend time interacting with people, and they can see it, and you don't necessarily have a queue of people lining up, kind of everyone to try and look through the eyepiece and potentially bump it, or not, or you spend time trying to help them even just center their eye and explain to them what they're seeing. This really allows you to engage with the crowd as a whole. So some of the reasons to do EAA, it really has to do with as our eyes age, or if anyone has any other visual impediments. This really kind of takes out that factor and allows people to view on a much larger scale monitors. And even people who might have any sort of physical limitations, whether they can actually stand up and hold themselves in front of a telescope and peer through an eyepiece. Young children especially have difficulty looking through an eyepiece. My favorite is always when you get the really, really young kids coming out with their parents, and they're trying to look at it, and they're putting their hands on the eyepiece and they keep smacking their forehead trying to look through the eyepiece. But that helps. You get to enjoy images in color rather than shades of gray. It does allow for internet broadcasts and virtual star parties, one of which we'll be having Friday through the club. It's quite amenable to remote control and viewing. So you can set it up in your driveway or whatever and do real-time observing from the comfort of your home, or at least given some of these current weather conditions in the warmth of your home. And it really enables you, the observer, if you will, to capture many more photons in a much more effective way than just the human eye does. So you can get those really deep space objects with much smaller apertures. And compared to, and this is just a comparison between imaging, this allows you to view dozens of objects in an evening rather than collecting data for one or two or three in an evening. And I think especially in these times, it does allow for, or especially in the future, it does allow for some socially distant astronomy. So there are some drawbacks, and depending upon your setup, and this is especially true if you're comparing this with visual observing, it's more difficult to set up. It definitely takes a little bit more knowledge to operate and to take down many more cables. You've got to deal with monitor, extra equipment, and then of course powering all that equipment. The use of a projector or monitor or laptop will definitely produce additional white light. So you've got to make sure you're practicing good astroneighbor behavior, and definitely much more can go wrong in an evening with EAA than with just simply viewing via an eyepiece. And I think what could be very limiting or very deterring for some people is still is a good steep learning curve, especially for some of the software when you're trying to do this. So several nights of experimentation, I think, are fantastic. That's really when I was bit by the bug. I went to a star party called the East Coast, the East Coast Video astronomy rendezvous, and we're basically discouraged from using any of your eyepieces. So really kind of just staying focused and saying, you know what, I'm going to get this to work. I've made tremendous leaps there, and also having other similar EAAers there really helped kind of get over that learning curve. So what equipment is needed? And as far as cameras, honestly, you can start with what you have. So a smartphone, for example. In this scenario, all you've got to do is purchase an adapter to hold your phone to your eyepiece, and this makes it quite easy to do. In this scenario, I've got pictured the Celestron NEXYZ. I use one of these as well, and it is actually quite it is much more forgiving than other adapters for smartphones. If you have a DSLR, many DSLRs already have a video mode that you can use, and some software is available that allows you to live stack images from a DSLR. And if we have time at the end, I'm actually going to use kind of a very similar method, so I can share raw images that I've captured and show how live stacking works. So something you can absolutely do with a DSLR, or a dedicated Astro camera. So these cameras are going to allow individual users to very enhance the feed that's coming from the cameras. So obviously we're going to be dealing with integration time, or in some cases exposure time, color balances, gain, gamma, etc. As far as camera preferences, I think there are two major camps, and that would be in ECD camp as well, and then the CMOS camp. Now, and also complexity-wise. So if you're just starting or you're unsure, I definitely recommend going on the cheaper side with a CCD camera like the Revolution 2. I had a very, very similar camera when I first started. You don't need a computer. This company provides some great kind of turnkey solutions for this. You don't even basically buy everything you need. They even sell a DVR that you can use to capture stuff. So it's kind of a all-in-one kit, and it's pretty reasonable as far as the expense. I think $200 to $300 for the basic kit, and closer to $400 if you get the monitors and other things. But definitely a really, really good option if you start. But if you want higher quality pictures, and that's where I'm moved from, I wasn't happy with the standard resolution. So think 600 and I can't remember the numbers, 600x pixels across, 480 pixels down. Again, not very high quality coming off of some of these CCD cameras. I wanted better. But when you get to these CMOS chips or these dedicated cameras like the ZWOs, you're going to have a computer to run the software. You will get higher resolution, but these chips themselves, while they have super, super low read noise, the sensitivity is not what the CCD chips had. So you've got to do longer exposures. And for me personally, I prefer a cooled camera. It just helps keep things a bit more constant if you want to leverage using darks. That's something that the software does allow you to do, is do dark subtraction real time as you view. The cooled camera really helps with that, and also actually helps keep a lot of the noise and interference down. So one thing that's very important, though, is regardless, do your research, try to match your scope, your optical training, and your camera. So depending upon what kinds of things that you want to look at, what kinds of focal reducer you might need. And this is where this part of the hobby really leans more towards it's closer to imaging, in that you have to understand kind of what all these things mean, what your F ratio is when you're talking about the focal length of your imaging train, understanding pixel sizes and that sort of thing. to get the best quality views, you really need to understand how all those interrelate together. And again, you're going to want to use a really long focal length to capture planets and super small galaxies, or do you want a really short focal length to get very, very wide views? Okay. As far as telescopes go, again, try with what you've got. Just about any telescope will do, as long as that telescope can reach focus with your camera. Aperture is much less important with EAA than it is for visual use. And oftentimes, focal ratio is going to be more important, and that goes back to matching your camera. That's what your camera can do. And just like astrophotography, the shorter the focal length, the faster you're going to be able to acquire your pictures. And that's also going to give you a wider field of view. Whatever you can, obviously, unless you're talking, you want to take those views of planets, the shorter the focal length, the better. And EAA tends to favor cameras with smaller sensors. But again, that combination of kind of the small sensors, and if you have a long focal length, you could get a very, very narrow field of view. So again, whatever telescope you're using, most of the time you're going to need to look at using some sort of focal reducer to at least get a field of view that is acceptable or easier to use. And this also comes into play when we talk about mounts. SCTs with Hyperstar do very, very well in this regard. And the larger the aperture, obviously, the more susceptible the scope is to light pollution, moon glow, atmospheric disturbances. So, a 14-inch SCT, even 11-inch SCT, at times can be a bit of a drawback, a little more difficult to use than with an 8-inch SCT or even a refractor. We talked about mounts real quick. Pretty much, again, any mount will work. It all really depends ultimately on your need to do exposures. So one thing that I also want to just highlight here for folks that are kind of newer to the hobby is the difference between a capture or a single exposure and the total exposure time, is that there is a difference between the two. But the mount that you have or the mount that you should get will depend a lot on the objects you're viewing or trying to capture and how bright or dim that object is. So a Dobsonian absolutely will work just fine for EAA, but you will be limited in the amount of exposure time, even in your single capture exposure. So in other words, the object is going to move out of view. So you're going to have to be able to capture those views very, very quickly, versus the telescope that tracks. So, and that's these other two telescopes. This is my refractor in the top right, as well as an alt-az tracking scope down in the bottom. These cases, you can actually do close to unlimited number of total exposure time because these are tracking, and the software can just keep building and building and building those images. But even then, with an alt-az scope, your individual single exposure is limited by the fact that this particular type of mount doesn't rotate exactly with the night sky. In other words, if you tried to do a 30-second exposure with an alt-az mount, those stars in your field of view will actually start to streak, versus if you've got a good scope, it's polar aligned and it's equatorially mounted, that's going to rotate exactly as the image rotates. So again, if you're going to do you want to do single exposures beyond, in my experience, about 15 seconds, you've got to have some sort of equatorially mounted scope. So again, your mount in and of itself that you use will absolutely dictate what your total exposure and your captures. think I mentioned some of these. Over 15 seconds, definitely have to use that wedge mounted scope. But yeah, for big bright objects, some of the planets, absolutely, just manually tracking, and you can get some really nice views. The one thing that's absolutely amazing, and I can't sell it enough, is the software today can really account for a lot of that field rotation that I mentioned. That is an issue with Alt-Az scopes, as well as any kind of tracking errors. The software will automatically compensate for that. I mentioned focal reducers and Barlows. These are just some examples. We've got your standard SCT focal reducer on the top left. You've got a 1.25" 0.5 focal reducer. This works very well on smaller cameras that have what they call a C-mount. Here, an example of a Hyperstar, and I've also played around with doing variable options. So in some cases, this version in the bottom left here with spacers, you can stack one of these 1.25" focal reducers. So instead of seeing getting 0.5x of reduction, I've played around with these different spacers and been able to get well down into the f3 area. Although at times your view is going to get really kind of you see a lot of gulling and aberrations once you get kind of down below f3.5, but it can be done, and you can actually do it even with the larger focal reducers. I've seen some pretty impressive views or snapshots taken stacking two of these 0.63 reducers. So lots of different options out there. The computer, the laptop, and the monitor also is a consideration as far as the equipment that you need. So that near real-time view, that's the NRTV, that can actually be sent to a monitor, which is this first example, and this is the Revolution 2 camera. Here we've got one of the single-arm SCT. They've got an iPad controlling probably the scope, and they've got a monitor right on top of the scope to objects. And then the rest of these views are showing different options in terms of having a laptop mounted, an additional monitor, etc. So lots of different options, but you can see definitely you're going to be spreading some light out onto your observing location. Video grabbers, these are only needed if you've got one of the analog out computers, and this is where it basically converts that analog out signal from the camera back to digital, so it can be used laptop. But I've found that it gets some weird signals, and it's almost like these randomized hot pixels, and basically best that I can understand it is that these are aberrations that are created when the signal has gone from digital, because obviously it's you are using a sensor, so it's digital there. Converting that to analog and back to digital, you just get some weird anomalies. The software is really where it's at, and these are just some versions. So if you've got a Malincam, I've been told this Milo Slick software is really, really neat. The Infinity software, also very, very highly regarded, but as I understand it, it's only available to be used with cameras. Lodestar Live, again, another one of these camera-specific packages, and that's for the Starlight Express cameras. Astrolive, I don't know if this is still being supported. It was the first piece of software that I started using, and it was actually really, really, really good. But it is independent. Kyle, who developed it, he's a one-man show. I know he started in partnership with ZWO, but I don't know if it's still going on. support it. The original software is actually pretty good. Then SharpCap, this I think is the overwhelming favorite, and it's very, very popular. Some versions are free, but even the full versions I think are $10 or $15 for the year and are very, very well worth it. Astro Toaster is another piece of software that I think is specifically dedicated for DSLR and maybe some CCD cameras, although I have no experience with that. And just some other things to consider. And again, I think this applies to many of the imagers as well, is you don't just get your imaging rig set up. It's all about, okay, do I have the right laptop? Do I have a monitor tent? Do I have a shield for this? I've seen a lot of people use small tents, especially for Astro or for EAA, because although you see a lot of imagers will put those nice red ruby gel coatings or whatever they're called on top of their laptops, that actually kind of I think takes away from EAA, because it's not just about making sure, yeah, all of my settings are correct. You're really doing your observing at the in front of the monitor. So that's almost like putting a piece of red cellophane over your eyepiece and then only seeing stuff in red. So you'll see a lot of the EAAers come up with some options to really kind of shield that. RVs make very, very comfortable places to observe from, especially if you're in a dark remote site. You just pipe everything into your RV. The gentleman on the side here, this is one of these larger teardrops, and I actually spoke with him on cloudy nights, but he has a whole setup here where he has kind of these blackout curtains that will go over the back of his hatch. So he's kind of encased in this nice little bubble with a scope right outside, and he has access to all his stuff. His kitchen in the back here becomes his work surface, and he's even got access to his refrigerator real time. So another thing to consider in terms of other stuff, focal, any kind of focus mask, very, very huge. Automated focusers, something that will allow you to stay in front of your laptop screen and adjust focus instead of having to run out to your scope and start twisting the focus knob. And you will have to also make some provisions for field power or a battery box, especially when you're running a computer, do heaters, a camera, etc. And this is just an example of my setup. This was from the East Coast Video Astronomy Rendezvous in 2019. So here is my Alt-Az scope all set up. Then I have my ice fishing shelter. I found this works phenomenally well and keeping everything blacked out. So you cannot see any light trespass or any light leaking from this. And even if it did, I got a red one, so even if some of the coating starts to become a little bit frayed off inside, it will leak light in red. Got my battery box down here, all covered up. My computer actually stays inside of that, still covered up from all the dew and moisture. Of course, you need your solar telescope for daytime use. I do use a refractor when I want to go for some wide field views. This is an achromat, so you do get some of the chromatic aberration, but it's okay. And especially for after a long night, you do need those afternoon naps. So I bring a nice portable hammock and an outdoor kitchen with coffee, as well as a camper, which really makes for a very comfortable week of a star party. So what can you expect when you're doing EAA? And, well, yes, it definitely increases your light grasp. I've been told everything from 3 to 6 times. My experience has been it looks more like 3 times rather than 6 times, but hey, other people have told me, no, it's 6 times. It's great on dim objects like galaxies, nebula, and globular clusters. You're not going to get the shimmer that you do of open clusters visually from a camera. I mean, you really can't compete with the dynamic range of the human eye. So, I really feel like for open clusters and for planets, still, the human eye is probably a better option. But at the same time, you're not going to get the same kind of photographic quality views with only tens of seconds, maybe even a few minutes of data, and definitely no processing versus a view that you would get of an object that has been processed. So this is a 20-second capture. So this is a CCD camera that I was using through my C11. And let's compare that of the Whirlpool Galaxy compared to 75 minutes with the C11. And yes, EAA looks great. You're going to be hard pressed to ever try and get this sort of a view from any sort of telescope, 30 inches in aperture or smaller. You're never going to get that. But again, you're not going to see this sort of view with only a few moments, minutes, whatever of exposure time. So again, don't expect photographic quality from that. Now, that is something, I'll pause here just to say, it's not to say that, and some of my comments have been very much, it's either or, and they're not really meant to be. Any data you get from EAA, you can certainly put together and stack and try to create much nicer pictures, these much more higher quality views. But EAA in and of itself is not about ending up with a beautiful picture. It's just enhancing what you could have seen. So here are some of my own examples. So these are all from my old CCD camera. And we've got the Eagle Nebula, Crab, Dumbbell. Again, these are all really small resolution photos. So you can see a little bit of graininess in here. Some of these stars look a little bit blocky. But what I loved about this CCD camera, it was just so instant. I was able to get those views in really less than 20 seconds. Then I upgraded to the CMOS camera. Again, now we're talking minutes instead of seconds to develop those views. But quite frankly, I much prefer the viewing or the observing that I get with the CMOS camera. So again, trying to replicate a few of those again. Here's the Eagle Nebula, the Ring, the Dumbbell, and the Sculpture Galaxy. So definitely, I think it is a much, again, the image quality, I don't think you can compare, but it does take a little bit longer to capture. And, you can even do some very simple viewing. So let's get this video to play. Hopefully it should be playing. I don't know why it doesn't show that it's playing. Well, I won't mess around with it too much, but so this is just a view that I was able to get. So getting back to the whole idea of that smartphone. So this is using my 4-inch refractor. I'm not tracking anything, and I just wish I could actually get it to play. But it's still quite amazing what you can see through just an iPhone, putting it on your eyepiece, and just kind of manually tracking around the views. You can see the craters and everything. So even with the cell phone and a very, very simple Alt-Az non-tracking mount, it's quite impressive what you can do. So I'm going to pause here before I jump into a demo of SharpCap for any questions.
I've got a quick one for you, Mike. Have you ever tried the live stacking in fire capture?
I have not, but that is very much another popular program, but I have not.
Okay, yeah, because I was curious because that's the I like SharpCap, but it only works on Windows, so where fire capture works on other platforms. So.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, so I will jump in and show a little bit of actually capturing this. Now, so these were captures, or these were images I'm going to show you of the Eagle Nebula that I got recently. And I'm not sure why they all, even though I was not in mono, I don't know, when I saved the pictures, everything came back as mono. So, but you'll get kind of the idea. And this is what you would do if you were using a DSLR camera. So SharpCap is not going to be able to connect to it. But if you had a DSLR and you had all of your images being saved to a particular folder on your laptop, a paid version of SharpCap will allow you, so you don't necessarily connect to a camera, you could select to the folder where those images are being captured. So I can select that here. So I've already pre-populated it. So it's just going to monitor whatever shows up in that folder, and you'll be able to start to stack those from there. So I do have about 138 different frames that I captured from here. These were about 10 seconds each, and you'll eventually get. And I apologize, this is the Orion Nebula, not the Eagle Nebula. But I have both, but I'll just go ahead and use this one. So you can see it's a little bit hazy. And what you would do is you would just kind of get this into the live stack mode. And in this scenario, I'm going to just basically play around here with the camera controls and make it mimic what it would normally see when it starts to capture frames. So I'm going to step into this. Okay, so right now, so I've started it. Now I'm on 3 frames. Some options here. By the way, is this okay to see with, is the resolution okay with the black on orange, or I can actually put that into, where is it? Out of night mode. That might be better. I think it's easier to see, right? Okay. So, within SharpCap, what I'm telling it to do is, one, to align the frames. So that's key, and for that, being able to do the live stacking. You can basically, there are a lot of different settings that you can customize for doing the alignments, and it all is going to depend, a lot will depend on the type of camera you use, specifically, what's your minimum star width, how many pixels will a star take versus the maximum, etc. And I can even show you, move forward a frame here, and you can see the different stars that SharpCap has decided to use for its alignment procedure. And one thing to look at, so is especially here at the edges. So right now I've got, basically each of these images is going to be stacked one on top of another, and these images were captured with my Alt-Az. So eventually you'll start to see how SharpCap has to start turning each one of these pictures in order to maintain that alignment. And the artifact that you'll see are these weird kind of triangular, abnormalities on the edges that are basically manifested every time you take and start, slowly and surely starting to take a whole bunch of frames, and then offsetting each one by just a little bit. SharpCap will also give you some information about what's going on with a particular frame, everything from understanding, you can actually see a graph, plotting of how well your alignment was done. You can guide if you'd like, and you can even, it'll start to even tell you exactly information about, well, your pixel values, bit depth, etc. And so we'll just kind of keep going through a few of these. So we're now at 4. I'm just going to go ahead and tell it to go through all 138. So you can see it, the image starts to build. I'm going to turn off my highlight stars, and you can now start to see these weird kind of triangular areas that are being built up as we are stacking. So it's literally taking, you know, capture by capture by capture and making sure all those stars stay aligned. So it's, in essence, it's rotating these images for me. So here we're now finished with the 138 views. At this point, or even throughout the process, I could be playing with the histograms to adjust to my own view, whatever I think is best, and so forth. Now, if I had captured this in color, which I still don't understand why it didn't, but you would actually see, obviously, you'd see just the luminance one here, but you'd also see, you know, the RGB graphs independently, and you could stretch those and play around with the saturation of each of those you know, channels from your camera. So this is in essence how you play around with the views. I find that you know, similar to a lot of the observing techniques, if I'm trying to get after some really deep sky objects, dim objects, sometimes I'll kind of really start to stretch out, you know, what I'm looking at, you know, to enhance the contrast. You know, I'll maybe even blow it out to see, you know, hey, is that little object there? So it is a lot like, you know, playing around with the different eyepieces, playing around with the different color saturations. So, you know, you can almost imagine it's like, okay, well, you know, are you using averted vision? Are you using the tap to try and tease out you know, some dim object in the corner? So that's in essence how SharpCap works, and I really wish I would have gotten this to work with color, but yeah, here it is. So this was 137 frames, a total of 3 minutes of exposure, and I've got arguably what is a, you know, I'm pretty happy with this view over Ryan, good enough to really start to see some detail, under, you know, see the nebulosity and say, yep, okay, next object. So that is SharpCap. So from there, that's it for my talk, and I just wanted to open it up for questions either on SharpCap or EAA equipment, you name it.
So, Keefe, I had a you know, just a nostalgia question. I mean, what camera did you start with, and what did you what forced you to move up from that to what you're using now?
Yeah, so I had started with a camera called the Astro Video Systems Mark. It was originally the Mark III. Then I sent it back to the manufacturer and got upgraded to something called a Mark IV. Very similar to this LN camera. In fact, it's the same body. It's just he had kind of used it slightly. He had modified the guts a little bit, and it was really phenomenal camera for the price point and everything. But ultimately, it came down to the image quality. So, you know, it took a lot to be able to get to kind of to this view of, let's say, like the Eagle, and I had one control, and it was, you know, it was very hard to get the computer to control the camera. Just the software interface wasn't great. It was, you know, basically it was a homemade, or you know, the manufacturer, the guy built it. So ultimately, I had a one hand controller for the camera, so I had to be within a certain range of it, and, you know, just the low resolution and the small sensor. So it was a 1 inch, or sorry, a 1/3 inch chip. So I really couldn't get that wide, and that's where I really wanted to get to something that's going to improve my views. So I would say it's closer to a step towards you know, astrophotography, and I went up to the ZWO 385 camera, and they stopped making that, and I'm seriously considering jumping up to the ZWO. I think it's the ASI 533 camera. Again, it's a little bit bigger chip, in a deeper well depth on the pixels. So again, just to really, enhance the views. And it's still a nice low read noise camera.
This might look familiar to you. Oh wait, probably doesn't show up.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
No, I was just gonna show it on my camera here. Hold on, let me. So I actually have the Revolution Imager R2. Hold on, let me.
Yep.
In case anyone wanted to see how small it is and stuff, I just gotta turn off the stupid background here. Hold on, because it's gonna wipe it out. So let me do that. So this is that kit that he was talking about. So it's everything you really need to start. And this little guy in the bottom on this side, that's the little DVR box that they have. So
What was that, John? What's that little thing?
it's a little it's a recorder. It'll record video live.
Oh, okay. All right.
So and you can save the individual frames, and like Mike said, and actually stack them if you want. It's not going to be regular image quality that we're used to, obviously, but
Yeah, and I think, and it's a great first step for people getting into the hobby. So I think so many people start into astronomy and they say, well, I want to take pictures too. Well, what is it that you want to take a picture of? Do you want to build an amazing mosaic of Andromeda, or do you just want to be able to show, hey, to your friends on Facebook what you saw? And that's, to me, two very different things. But oftentimes people will just say, well, I just want pictures. But the what you've got to do, the amount of time you have to invest into getting that amazing mosaic that you could print out and put on the wall is much more in terms of money, and a much higher amount of learning to get there versus very simple stuff.
the biggest detractor for the Revolution Imager R2 is it is a spaghetti cable mess. I mean, it's definitely, cabling all over the place. And, unless you go to the hassle of mounting that little monitor into your center finder bracket or something, you just have you have to there is trouble if you don't mount the monitor on the tube. So
as with anything astronomy related, there's not one ideal solution. Everything is a compromise.
Very good. So, Mike, you gave that demo right there, and you were thinking of getting the ASI 133, or excuse me, 533.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked at ZWO's website, but I guess just to get down to the question, are you going to go for color imaging, or keep it at mono or whatever?
Yeah, so my existing camera is color. I just don't know why it saved it as mono when I saved off, because there's an option in there to save everything off and save the raw frames. It just saved it as mono. I don't understand why. So I'll just have to play around with it next time.
Okay, very good.
But no,
have you ever tried the ASI 178 MC, or know anyone who uses that? Because I do have that camera, and I just was curious how it would work.
Yeah, I think it actually is very popular with folks. I'd need to validate the exact specs, and the only thing that is pushing me towards the 533 ultimately is just the low read noise. And the only reason that is a consideration is oftentimes you can post-process any of that read noise out pretty easy. That's just something you don't want to have to deal with. And yeah, you can have darks and other things, but then you've got to have even a broader dark library population. So again, it tends to be, we will favor the kind of the low read noise factor of a camera more so than other factors of a camera when you're doing EAA versus, if you're doing, you probably want to get something, with maybe a larger resolution view, or better well depth within the pixels if you're going to do really dedicated astrophotography.
The 533 has really small pixels.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's great if you're running your SET at f3, 3.5, but not native.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think it's 3.76 microns or something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
my camera right now has that set up, and yeah, when you're using it native, it's not great, but it's okay for planetary. Believe it or not, I haven't had a problem trying to do planets with it. But yeah, native, it's I can never remember if it's oh gosh, over or under sampling. It's one of the two, but it is if you use it at native.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 294. I think that's the compromise.
Yep. Yeah, that has bigger pixels, I think 4 or 5.
6.
6, okay.
I think it's 6.45.
Yeah, the 178 is a 6 megapixel sensor, but it is a very small pixel size. It's 2.4 microns or something like that. So.
Well, and I think that goes to, again, just trying to match your camera to your focal length, and just so you're kind of in the right zone.
Hey, Mike, can I ask a real noob question that doesn't involve the word microns?
Sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that presentation. I was just getting ready to shoot you an email actually to ask you some advice on this. So this is perfect.
Yep.
So I'm thinking about trying to do some of this with a DSLR. And I know you're not using DSLR, but just a terminology question. So when you're talking about like, a 15-second exposure, a 20-second exposure, you're not actually telling the camera to take 20-second exposures like you would on like a DSLR, right? It's just running video. And it's stacking that video, or it actually is taking those exposures?
It's so with the ZWO camera, it's really taking those exposures. Yeah. So and that's why, again, I can't go more than 15 seconds. With my old video camera, it basically did in-camera stacking. So no matter what it did, it was always taking 30. I think it was 30 exposures per second, whatever the standard rate is, or 29 or 24. I can't remember what. But what it would do with the old analog camera that I had, it would actually do integration. So it was still keeping those, but it was doing its own form of internal stacking, such that it would still get me to that point.
Yeah, and that's how the Revolution R2 is. It's an integration camera. I think it stacks 6 or 12, something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas with your DSLR, you're going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, you're going to be taking individual exposures and stacking them.
Yep.
Gotcha. So you're not going to be running video, even though sometimes it's called like video astronomy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where it came out of video astronomy. But
gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. So I could literally just run video and just happen to use a monitor rather than my eye.
Well, in this, to get the benefit though,
right,
it's stacking those individual frames, and that's what's being shown on the display on the computer.
Right. If you're not stacking, there's not much of an advantage over just naked eye. Well, eyepiece, yeah.
Yeah, although if I was using a DSLR, I would absolutely, again, if you don't want to have the computer, then absolutely, and just want a camera, you can actually definitely put it in video mode and capture it that way right to your card without a problem out in the field. But I think
separate them out later in software and then stack those. But then you really have crossed the line in the imaging because you're not looking at it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. Although some cameras can do stuff, I remember, and I cannot. If you'll remember, Travis. Oh gosh, I can't remember his last name. But yeah, he was a big fan. Yeah, he was a big fan of the Panasonic 4/3, and I remember him showing me some stuff that was really, really amazing, just in the view of the camera, right then and there.
I'm thinking the closest thing to quote live stacking in a DSLR will be bracketed exposures.
Yeah,
where you do over and under exposures, and they combine them.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
But that's the other thing where if I was doing it with a DSLR, I would absolutely use that folder monitoring, because then, although you can't necessarily control the camera with SharpCap, you can at least take those images and do the appropriate live stacking with them.
That makes sense. Let it build up. Yeah, very cool. Great, thanks.
Any other questions?
Do you know if SharpCap is starting to get any tools, kind of like the imaging tools? Because I just find it, compared to SGP, it just lacks some of the really nice tools to automate things.
So you can build scripts, absolutely. And there seems to be a fair amount of support for that. But honestly, I haven't played around with it.
Is there a
yeah,
repository that people are
Yes,
putting
yes.
like freeware ones?
Yes, there is on the SharpCap forum.
Oh, I'll have to go look at that.
Yeah.
I'm really looking for an autofocus tool that just kind of press a button and it does the work.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I have to say, I don't know if it's a function of the SCT and then an 11-inch SCT at that, but I find that I really have to check my focus about every hour. It changes enough, which is, I have to say, I went to, because again, just the whole package was I've got the Celestron one, using the, what do you call it? Oh my gosh, the sensor line, the Sky Sense. Now I can't remember what it's called. StarSense. StarSense auto aligner tool, and now I'm using their focuser. It's nice because it's all kept in their one kind of nice little packaging of software for C. It's called CP. And that I found has been great for. It's not automating it, but it definitely helps with the ease of all the different things.
Sorry, I dropped out there, but yeah, that's one thing I really liked about SGP was you could just tell it every hour or every time you change a filter or whatever, just go ahead and focus, and it would just do it. It'd be done in 15 seconds and carry on.
Yeah, it'll definitely do it because the SharpCap can. I mean, so SharpCap can take over any ASCOM piece. So, and it's got all the focusing tools there. So it'll do the what is it? Half measure, full width, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, they're not automated though.
Well,
So
that's where you have to build the script.
That's where you got to build the script.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it can do it. You just have to build the script to do it. Any other questions? Yeah, so
Go ahead, Mike.
The next thing I was really looking to try and do is, especially as we at some point will hopefully return to a bit more interaction with folks, especially in the outreach side. So I'm starting to play around with options to take one of those, what do you call it? Those tiny little Pico projectors and do the same thing and projecting onto the ground. So, I'll have to try and, be a bum at one of Amy's outreach sessions in the near future and show that off.
Okay, very good. Well, I guess, wrapping it up here, Mike, I want to thank you. And please let us know how, I hope you get that 533. Show us what happens. And if you do get the 533, hopefully it'll be a time where we can just like shove our faces into that screen and not have to worry about our health. So anyway, okay. Thank you for coming, and thanks for the presentation. I guess now we'll move into our second half of the meeting here. I guess I can yield the floor to Mike Keefe there. I mean, did you want to show us any images that you have from your EAA, or?
I'd be Yeah, I can certainly kind of show. I'll pull some up, but one thing I just wanted to share, just in general, is on the astronomy days front. So we've been having meetings with the museums, with the museum staff. It will be virtual this year. But we will have talks virtually, and we'll have sessions set up. So, some things would be video on demand. So if you think about like Meet the Raleigh Astronomy Club, where we would normally have a table and answer questions, we're going to develop some kind of video, maybe it's a 5 or 10 minute video. And when people come to the Astronomy Days website, there would be this option to say, oh, come meet the Raleigh Astronomy Club, hear what they have to offer. So again, we're looking at that. So you'll see an announcement come out about, if anyone has an idea of presentation. So if you want to give a talk about something, it is absolutely open. The museum is looking to reserve spots just for the RAC members. So we have, if anyone does want to share a talk, it is available. But also, if anyone has ideas of, hey, I know we've typically done, astrophotography or an imaging table. If you guys have any thoughts of how you'd want to have that done, if you'd want to have that done, and just kind of have maybe even a gallery posted for people to kind of flip through. That could be something that could be posted on the museum's website. So just planting the seeds.
Okay, all right, very good. Yeah, if I can twist people's arms around here, maybe we can put together a gallery for everybody to look at, what's happened over the years. I guess leading into that, also before we get into the second half of the meeting, I'll just go ahead and get the business portion out of the way, because we actually have something to talk about this time. So Friday, as in tomorrow, usually we would have the fourth Friday, which would be next Friday, but unfortunately that's during the Thanksgiving holiday. We would have our indoor meeting, or in these days, in these days it would be our virtual meeting. But the club decided to go ahead and move it up, and so that meeting is actually tomorrow. And what I'm getting at here, in respect with the gallery for Astronomy Days, the next club meeting tomorrow will be about will be an imaging showcase. So we've done this before in the past. Of course, we did this in person, but there is absolutely no reason that we can't do this virtually, because that's what we're doing when we're in the craft center at NC State, just staring at a screen. So we'll stare at everybody's screen, and what I'm getting at is that all the imagers that are here, I hope that you'll come by and show some of your images off to the club. And the only restriction that we have is that you keep your presentation 10 minutes or less. So if you want to show 100 pictures, I hope you can get it done in 10 minutes. So that basically gives you a rundown of what we would like to see there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's absolutely superb. Okay, so these are, as usual, even if we were meeting in person, these are members who may not know a single thing about how imaging works, but we're all about the nice pictures in like National Geographic or something. It's not every day that you see nice astro photos. So don't think that you're not out, you're going to try to win a Pulitzer with all your pictures that you'll be showing. No, just come by, tell us what you're up to, and show what you got. So, but yeah, again, just keep it 10 minutes or less. So that's one announcement. Of course, just went ahead and talked about the Astronomy Days. So I'd like to also put that together, try to have something to show them. And I guess I'll just communicate with the officers more so on that, because that was something I was brainstorming, but I'm glad Mike brought it up. Anyway, okay, with that, go ahead and speak up. Who wants to show some images?
Can show something, Chris?
Go for it, Steve.
All right, if sharing gonna work?
It should.
All right, let's try it here. All right, let's go here. Tell me,
Okay.
is that
Yeah,
showing
we
up?
see it.
All right. This is the mosaic I've been working on. It's now at 34 panels.
Wow.
Each panel is between 90 minutes and 2 or 3 hours, depending on when I did it and what was in it and that sort of thing. And so I keep adding more onto it as time goes on here. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because I want to be able to do like I'm doing now and zooming in on different things. So there's the veil in all in Cygnus and a little beyond Cygnus. And then butterfly and crescent. And down here is the tulip. And then going up here, you can just barely see the flying dragon, which is right in there, but it's pretty dim. And then the North American pelican, all of that, and all kinds of other sharpless type areas and that sort of thing. And then going up here is the cocoon.
Wow, that's pretty bright. Maybe I should actually try for that. Looks pretty easy to do.
It's very bright. And then over here, of course, the elephant trunk and the flying bat. And there's more sharpless things up in this direction. Okay. And so I've just been adding panel after panel, night after night this week and previous weeks. So I missed out of space here. I'm going to add something in there. And this area down here needs more. And there's lots of other stuff up in here, sharpless things and whatnot that are kind of interesting. So over time, I'll basically fill out this entire rectangle here and maybe go a little bit beyond. But the idea is to be able to zoom in on things and see as much as I can zoom in and see detail. Rather than taking one picture of the entire region where you could see some of these things, you can't really zoom in on that and see very much. So this is a lot of fun to do. But the problem I have is that there's only about 3 hours in which this is not in the trees. And so I have to, especially this area here, goes down very quickly. So like tonight, I won't even try to do this because it's already in the trees. So I'll probably do this regions up here and fill more things in as time goes on. So this is all HA, of course. And there's lots more up in this direction if you want to do that. So I was putting, sometimes one night I'll get one frame and sometimes I'll get 4 depending on trees and stuff like that. So I've been building it up over time. Okay, and then this is the elephant trunk with SHO, some combination of the colors. I'm not even sure. I'm doing this in AstroPixel processor to do the combination of things. And it took the stars out with StarNet, things like that. And this is just a really saturated version of, I think, 5822 or 7822. I forget what it is now. And just playing around. Then this is what my son did. I think I put this up. I guess it's not going to play. All right. Where my son and I are working on a video for this area to do that. But then tonight, let me change the sharing here on this one. And so tonight I've been working on this one. And this is the obviously the California Nebula, also with all 3 filters, SHO. And I'm just trying to learn how to use AstroPixel processor to combine things and get the colors that I want. And I like it because it's got all these sliders over on the side that allow me to fiddle around with combinations of colors slightly more easily, I think, than PixelMath does in PixInsight. So I'm just playing around. This is literally the first, I just brought this in an hour ago. So I haven't done any processing on the stars or anything in it, but it's kind of what came out of it when I just brought it in and set some SHO colors on it to see what it would look like. This is 4 hours of hydrogen, 3 hours of sulfur, and just 1 of oxygen. So tonight I'll probably try to get a few more hours of oxygen just to complete that out and get roughly the equal amount in each thing. But this comes up behind my trees, behind the trees about 1 a.m. So I can never get more than 2 or 3 hours of anything on this particular thing at this time of year. Anyway, so those are the 2 things I've basically been working on in the last month or so. when I've had clear skies. So that's all I've got tonight, Chris.
Okay, very good. Anybody else?
I've got some I'll show.
Go for it.
And Jim, I understand you were featured on was it Mead's social media channel?
Yeah, Mead picked up one of my pictures. I shoot with their 70 millimeter astrograph, and they picked up one of them. So this is for the DSLR imagers out there. I've been doing DSLR now for about a year and a half. One of these days, I will get a real astrophotography camera and get into filters and autofocusing, but I'm still having fun with this, so I'm still doing it this way. What I did get, though, is a dark sky sight. We got a cabin up at Smith Mountain Lake, and so the first thing we did was we cleared out 27 trees, which gave me a much better view of the sky. And so it's Bortle 4, and the view to the south is pretty nice, and it's probably Bortle 3 off in that direction. So this is just the first image I took that night. I was waiting for my real target, which was the Helix Nebula, to come around some trees. And so this is just, well, I'll just mess around, and this is just 19 minutes with a unmodded DSLR camera. It's not a great picture, fairly even good, but it's way better than what I can do in Raleigh. So I was like, okay, this is gonna be fun. So
I'm sorry, what scope was that?
It's a 70 millimeter f5 astrograph from Mead.
Oh wow, that's not too bad. Just with the DSLR.
Yeah,
looks better than my
this
SCT. So.
This is a really tight crop because this also included the Omega Nebula and some other stuff in there. I just kind of zoomed in on the center of the picture. So then the Helix Nebula came up, and this is 2 hours on the Helix. I couldn't quite get the faint hydrogen alpha regions on the outside, but still pretty happy with how that came out. And then I moved on to the Triangulum, which I could never really get well in Raleigh. Struggled to process this one. The data looked better in the subs than what I thought I would get in the end, but it was still much better than what I can get in Raleigh. And the one I was really happy with is, even though I got this astrograph planning on shooting Orion, I really had never shot Orion other than a couple minutes when I first got the scope. So after a year and a half, I finally went back to shooting Orion. And this was 2 hours. The sun was coming up towards the end, at least the sky was starting to brighten. But I did this is my first HDR image where I did some 30-second subs and some, I think the others were 2 minutes. Got about 2 hours of data. And again, much better than what I think I can get in Raleigh and getting all the dust in there. And then this is the one that while I was processing it, I was playing around with StarNet, trying to figure out how to process these without messing up my stars. And so this is my first StarNet image. I thought that Orion looked kind of cool like that.
What camera is that you took this with?
It's a Canon 5D.
Interesting.
Some amazing pictures.
Yeah, came out pretty well.
Wow.
Yeah, it says something about the importance of darkness. Who needs a cooled astro camera if you can get that in 2 hours?
Yeah. Just take some dark skies. I really can't do this in Raleigh.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Where were you when you did this?
Smith Mountain Lake.
Oh, yeah. I really know where that is. Where is that? So
it's up north of Staunton, Virginia.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's in Virginia.
Yeah. It's about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
And the last thing I'll show was just sort of a happy accident that happened. The next night, I wasn't going to be home when the imaging started. So for the first time, I set up SGP to start imaging without me. And I was going to image the Shark Nebula in the north. And I came back and the scope was pointing to the south. I'm like, what are you doing? But it was guiding. So I was kind of curious to see what I got. And when I did some plate solving of images, I had caught this minor planet, which is Parega 554. So I just thought I'd make a little video out of the blink images. I thought that was cool.
Oh, wow.
Without really meaning to, I just kind of caught that. So it was just sort of a happy accident. And the last one I was trying to show you. That's
Mark Lang would be proud.
I'm proud. I mean, hey, it was just
really
last year when I saw the moons of Uranus, and they're not impressive nebulae, but I'd never seen it before. So That was pretty giddy, actually. I wish I would have recorded a color image or a color video of it to show the club, but I saw Phobos for the first time on camera. So that was kind of neat. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Shark Nebula, very good.
Yeah, I'll end on that one. So that was just my first Darky Nebula, which I can do up there. Again, can't do it in Raleigh. And I'll end there.
That Pleiades, what's that Pleiades all about down there?
So that is one that I took a couple weeks ago. Let's see if I can find that again. I can share that one more time. Share screen. Here it is. So that was one a couple weeks ago. And that's another one I was kind of messing around with the HDR. I did some weird halos around the stars. So still kind of trying to figure out how to get those bright stars to come out in the Pleiades. But it did give me some nice dusty lanes around it.
And that was with the 70mm scope?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
same scope.
Very good. Okay, is that it?
That's all I got.
Excuse me. All right, anybody else?
Chris, I got a couple of rocket launch pictures here.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Is this the Atlas?
Well, it's a Falcon 9 and the Atlas.
Oh, very good.
This is this is 2 weeks ago. The Falcon 9 launch at night, just as it was passing the coast, and it's a 3-second exposure.
What mission was that?
It was not a manned mission. I think it was the cargo to the ISS. I'm not sure. It was November 5th. So,
okay.
I think it was a reconnaissance satellite.
There you go. That's what it was. Yeah.
NROL.
That's right. That's right. And there was another one on the Atlas. It was the National Reconnaissance.
Maybe that
This was an unmanned satellite being placed in orbit. But yeah. Anyway, this is with an 80 to 200 millimeter lens at about 150 millimeters, and it's a 3-second exposure, just a camera on the tripod, at ISO 3200. Some people say it looks like the Starfleet emblem. You know, it's turned sideways.
Yeah, it does.
And, but this one,
Something that just went into warp.
Can you all see this one?
That's the other one. Are you showing another image? Or?
Showing a video right now. Are you seeing it?
No, we still see the SpaceX image.
Okay, hang on here. Let's see what's up here.
Yeah, when you share in the Zoom meeting, sometimes there's a little box before you actually click share that says optimize video and audio for whatever. Otherwise, if you don't check them, sometimes the videos won't come through.
Okay, I'm not seeing that. So
yeah, you have to do it before you start sharing it. It shows up in the panel before you start the screen share.
Okay. All right. So what do I do then?
Thou shalt not use too much of Zoom company's bandwidth.
Yeah, if you stop sharing and then start it again, but before.
Okay, let's see. Stop share. Okay.
Yeah. And then when you click on share screen again, you'll be presented with the option window. And then towards the bottom, I think it's left, there's one like
optimize screen sharing for video clip.
Yep.
Okay. I got you. Okay. See anything now?
Yep.
Yeah, we see that.
Okay. This is the Atlas launch. And about 20 seconds into it, there's some staging that's kind of cool. This is it's from my backyard, and the launch was delayed. There's the staging right there.
Wow.
launch
wow.
was delayed a few minutes, which was too bad because it would have been in sunlight a lot longer on the way up. But it's still kind of interesting, and that's the staging, and you'll see the two components growing further apart here.
What focal length was this shot with?
This is with a Nikon D750 DSLR and a 300 millimeter f2.8 lens.
That is impressive. If you hold a 300 millimeter lens, that's steady.
I had a friend loan me a $7,000 fluid head video tripod, and that's what.
Okay, I was going to say, hand holding that at 300 millimeters would be rough.
No, it would have been a lot rougher than it is right now. Of course, it's still, the driving is still suspect, but.
So are those stars going through as you're kind of moving it? Because I'm assuming you're keeping up with the tracking.
Those are background stars, yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right. Very cool.
But, I'm trying my best. I'm just looking at the screen on the back of the camera. Didn't have a a hood over the screen or anything like that. I was just looking at the screens while I was.
I don't think anybody's going to criticize your videography skills. That's pretty impressive.
Well,
you're here.
Something to see. These a lot of launches are coming right up the East Coast, and if they're what you really want is a dawn launch, because then all the plumes are backlit by the sun, and that was not the case for this one. That was an evening launch, but anyhow, that's what I got.
Cool.
Very nice. Okay, anybody else?
Just curious, was anyone able to see the Crew 1 manned mission? I don't know if I was looking in the right spot, but I had really patchy clouds.
I was overcast. I was ready to shoot it because it was going to take a similar track, but it was overcast here. Some friends of mine saw it very well and were very impressed with it. They were near Kinston, so it was clear over Lenore County, but I was overcast.
Not a whole lot in the way of launches visible from Tennessee, I don't think.
But a friend of mine, Chuck Liddy, retired N&O photographer, shot one of the dawn launches from Blowing Rock. It wasn't very high, but he was able to get something, when it just came up the East Coast, and he was at his condo in Blowing Rock. So yeah, he had no idea he would be able to see it, but here it comes.
Okay. I guess I'll just show what I was just working on before the meeting. So maybe I don't know if I'll do this every single time, but if I have an image that is kind of new, I'll just process it here in front of anybody. And if anybody wants to give me any input or have questions, yeah, feel free to speak up. But anyway, yeah, I was started at the beginning of the meeting, and I was just these had already been stacked, and they've been, all of them were stacked, all three channels, hydrogen alpha, which is this guy right here, and oxygen 3, which is this one, and then sulfur 2, which I hate the stars in this, but I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and pay, I guess, buy another filter. But anyway, so this is the Tadpole Nebula, named after these little things right here. And so this was hydrogen alpha. That's 12 hours. All three of these were 12 hours. And I finished this last night. So yeah, unfortunately, it didn't get high enough to get out of the sky glow of apex, just to be on the safe side. I had to start around 10 o'clock for all three channels, and then set an alarm and then got up at 2 o'clock because I don't know why it just does not want to stop for me, but stop the mount at 2 a.m. after 4 hours. So anyway, that's what these three are right here. These are the stacked images, and processed all of them. And so I went ahead and did a what you call it, a bicolor HOO, which is hydrogen, oxygen, oxygen. The middle one, at least in my case, or the middle channel, at least in my case, is a 50% oxygen and 50% hydrogen, which is this guy right here, the green channel. But anyway, so yeah, that's what I got right there. And I try to, you know, when I'm doing my WHO images, or HOO images, I'm just trying to get as close to what our eye could possibly see if we actually could pick up color from objects through the eyepiece. But yeah, there's that. I need to tweak that some, but again, I just did this all on the fly, you know, right before the meeting started. And then this one you just saw, that's SHO. So yeah, Tadpole Nebulous, named after these little formations right here. I think it's called IC410. Andy said that, Andy, were you working on the Flame Nebula up here like right now, or was that just something that you have going on in the future?
I'm collecting data on IC405 in that area, so I may actually have
so
that.
it's up in here is what it is. Okay. Yeah, so you said you did it with a 200mm lens, and I assume you're using your ASI 1600?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm fairly certain you'll pick up this guy too. I did that same region with this same camera, and you know, we were talking about in depth before the meeting started that we had the pretty much the same kind of focal length scope and setup and whatnot.
Yep.
You should be seeing this somewhere in there, unless you laid unless
It's
you're
just smaller.
Yeah. Your sensor should be bigger than, actually, I think your sensor is bigger than the ASI 183. There's more pixels in the ASI 183, so that's why.
No, I'm just saying it'll look smaller because I'm using a 200mm lens.
Oh, well, yeah, the tadpole, yeah.
Yeah, Andy, the tadpoles would be kind of a smallish cloud or dot in your image.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if you were to go to my Flickr page, DCCOLE421, that's what I did. I think it was last year where I caught both of them. It was the tadpole and the flaming nebula, or flaming star nebula, using a 200mm lens and ASI 183, which has a smaller sensor, which makes me believe, Andy, you should be able to get this guy too. Unless you're way off on this side. It all has to do with whatever framing you were doing at the time when you're taking a picture of your flaming star. Because I knew this guy was down there, so I went ahead and tried to fit both of it into 200mm, and it worked nicely. But anyway, then I brought this up just because Michael Fulbright told me to look into it a little bit further, and well, I tried to process it out a little bit more, but there's that bubble. I think it was the soap bubble is what you call it, and it's very slight. From what I understand, it was an amateur imager that found it. This is a planetary nebula. It's very slight, and I could understand it if you were to see it. If you were to go out and take a picture of the Crescent Nebula, like right here, you would almost think that this is something that your flats would take out, because it almost reminds me of a dust mote. So, but anyway, yeah, that's from an older picture. That's kind of all I have. So, but again, to reiterate to everybody who's here, who would like to, or who have images that they've taken the past year, yeah, I highly encourage you to, like, if you can spare the time, come out to the Radar Club meeting tomorrow night, and we'll be having our it's kind of annual, sometimes a semi-annual imaging showcase where all of the imagers in the club show off what they've taken in the past year. So, okay, I guess that's it. Does anybody have any other, I guess, business to bring up? I guess another thing I could talk about is that Michael Fulbright, he was good enough to get in touch with some people. Let me see here, some other people that could present in future meetings of 2021. Let's see, hold on. Like for example, we have, I'll make sure I'm getting this right, Matt Harbison, who did his, I think it was like a 200 panel. Am I getting that right, John? You and I discussed that earlier.
Yeah, it's a 200 panel mosaic.
Yeah, of the Orion Nebula area. And yeah, it's absolutely huge. And so 200 panels. Okay, well, I do mosaics. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm like super intrigued by doing that much paneling for a mosaic. But the thing that really fascinates me the most with this image, and I'm going by what you're saying, John, that this is a 2 gigapixel image. So that's something I've had on my bucket list, is to take an image of an area and just see if I can get 1 billion pixels to be packed into a single image. And hopefully I'll have a computer that can actually handle processing such a thing. But
yeah, he had to actually build a Threadripper machine to do it.
Okay.
So,
well,
and that's why I've got his old Mac Pro that I just bought from him.
Okay, very good.
So,
Chris,
yes.
I just checked one of my subframes and I do have the tadpole in it.
Oh, okay, very good. You want to show it?
Sure.
Yeah, go for it. Hey,
Let's see
we
here.
just did EAA, so this is sort of an example, right?
Yep. Y'all see that?
Not yet. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
Very nice. Yeah, this is much wider than my sensor. You also caught, I think that's M38, the open cluster there at the bottom right.
This guy? Oh, cool.
It's an open, yeah, that's the tadpole that you just did. But yeah, where your cross marks are right now,
Okay, cool.
or crosshairs are, yeah, that's I think that's M38 right there. And then there's that.
I just framed something in a lab and I didn't realize this was called tadpole.
Yeah, I think I guess you want the formal, what I like to call it, I hate calling them catalogs just because you're given all kinds of numbers. It's IC 410, I believe, is what that one is.
Okay.
But yeah, tadpole's pretty easy to remember anyway. But yeah, I guess getting back to what I was talking about. So there we have Harbison coming in to talk about that 200 panel mosaic, and then Michael Fulbright was also able to get Dale Gintz. He's a contributor to Nighttime Image and Astronomy, or NINA. He'll give us a talk. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. Michael Fulbright, I think you're still here. He's doing this on March?
Yeah, he's going to do it in March.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so let me check my calendar here. The next meeting, it's not very close to Christmas, but I don't know of a topic right offhand that we have for it. So let me see. Second Friday would be the 11th. So therefore, the next Thursday would be our imaging meeting, which is the 17th. So yeah, I don't think we have a topic just yet. So maybe we can even just do an imaging showcase there as well. Yeah, I guess we can hold Andy to it and, not let us down with that 200 millimeter image that he just showed us. But okay, anything I'm missing? Anything else?
Hey, I got one image I just want to show. It's an older one that I did, and I just wanted to, since we were showing a bunch of narrowband stuff, I wanted to show one that I did that I'll give a little background on it before I show it. Is most people that have talked to me know I prefer more natural looking colors. So one of the things I've done is I've actually purchased a hydrogen beta filter And that's what I use hydrogen alpha for red, oxygen 3 for green, and hydrogen beta for blue. And when I was doing some test frames, I ended up doing the dumbbell nebula, and this is what I ended up with out of that. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, it's pretty natural looking.
Yeah,
visually.
Right. I mean, and this was, believe it or not, this was actually 25 1-minute exposures each. They were only 1 minute. So
what camera is that? Let's
the
go
ASI
to camera.
1600. It was the ASI 1600, and I believe at the time it was my Orion 120 ST doublet that I had as the optical imager on it, or optic tube. So, but I mean, I had to stretch it really hard, and because of the short exposures. But it was mostly a test to see if I could get some blue in there, and as you can see, I did get some, which I was pretty happy with. So, I've had discussions with people saying there's not a lot of blue out there, but there is some. So, yeah, I just wanted to, for the, I guess you call it the purists that kind of like the natural colors like me, you can consider getting hydrogen beta filters. Obviously, there's a lot less return on that because there's not as much of it out there, but you can get, I really want to shoot Orion this year with it and see how it comes out. I want to see.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Orion has a lot of beta in it, but I'm looking at this image. Actually, you said these are just 1 minute exposure. It's a 1 minute exposure stack.
Yeah, it's 25. It's either 25 or 50 from each channel. I can't remember, but it's hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, and hydrogen beta, 1 minute exposures.
Yeah, well, when I look at this, I look at the two lobes, for the most part, straight up and down that are green.
Yeah.
The lower lobe, the green one, if you just go a little bit beyond that, you see a void of outer space, and then after that, you start to see another shell starting to show up there.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could just like maybe go a little bit longer with the exposures and a lot, I guess, a lot more of them. If that would show up some more.
This was actually my first narrowband image.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very first one. So, and I was just doing a test. I really wasn't trying to, do a serious attempt at it. So I was pretty pleased with how it came out for a test.
Yeah, I would be happy. I mean, you're right. I mean, it looks just like something that would come off a DSLR. So, I mean, where was this taken?
Big Woods.
Big Woods. Okay. Well, I mean, not super dark, but I guess it would survive better than here in downtown.
But yeah, so just food for thought for those of you that like the narrowband. Don't rule out the hydrogen beta. That's it. That's all I wanted to show.
All right, very good. Dave, did you have anything coming off the pipeline right now from your setup? David Keller? I don't know if he's still here. Okay, well, I guess that's it. All right, thanks for everybody coming. Mike Keefe, thank you for a presentation, and I guess we'll talk it over amongst ourselves of what we may want to do for December 17th for our meeting next month.
Do you guys want me to send out that link to Matt's Orion to the imaging group again?
Yeah, sure. I already have it on. I found it on Yahoo.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to see if anyone wanted it. I figured I'd ask while we were here since we were talking about it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you even said it in your email. That was that the computer you have was the one that actually put it together. So.
Well, no, it actually he started it on this one, but he couldn't finish it. It was that it took too long to stack and arrange the mosaic on this Mac Pro with 64 gigs. So that's where he built that Threadripper machine to do it. So, and it still took like 4 days or something ridiculous, I think. It took a long time for it to finish stacking it, he said. But I'm sure that's going to be all. I'm not going to steal his thunder because that's what he's going to talk about in January's meeting, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. yeah, I guess that'll do it for us, and we'll see you next month. If not, have a good holiday, or Happy New Year, whatever. Okay, talk at you later. Bye.
Thanks all.
All right. See y'all
Bye-bye.
later. Bye.